What's up, guys? Hope everyone is doing well. In this video, I'm going to be going over Bitcoin, and then I'm going to jump into going over the Bitcoin dominance, over the altcoin market value, and then I'm going to go over some of the altcoins, actually all of them that I've gone over within the last week or so. But first off, we have, as you can see here, the total crypto market value, and since the last time I posted about 6 days ago, we still have this vector zone here, obviously. As I said, it goes all the way down around 2.28 trillion, so there's still definitely room to see a recovery anywhere down to around 2.65. But since the last video, we've seen the market value here go up from around around just approximately 3 trillion to around 3.5 trillion. So just within the last roughly 7 days, we've seen about 500 billion flow into the overall cryptocurrency market value, which is quite a lot. Obviously, just going back to, let's see here, basically the weekly candle of November 11th, especially the one of the 18th, the market value here broke the prior all-time high, setting clearly new all-time highs. I mean, really don't need to say this, but every time in history you've seen this, it's been really the onset of the final thrust and really the most parabolic portion of the bull market. If you look here at the 6-hour chart here for Bitcoin, I mentioned, again, just to reiterate, going back somewhere right here, as Bitcoin was just reaching around 90, pushing up to around 94K right here around mid-November, mentioning that this would be very similar to the impulse of, well, rather the second impulse of the current bull market we're in, which I'll get to, showing that once more here shortly. And I was saying that we would just see, as what we've been seeing here, this slow gradual wavering upwards. We're seeing this trend zone here being held as support. These recent two local lows here, end of November and then here, so in the last 24, 48 hours, are going a little bit lower than the trend support of these back here. Each of these two finding support along the 50 EMA and its band. And if I go back to the portion that I've been comparing this to, so really right here. So this second impulse again is from 25K to around 75K when Bitcoin was finally breaking 30K back here towards the end of October, beginning of November 2023. Again, a very similar time frame as we are now in 2024. And if you look here at this movement right here in price, where it had this thrust upwards and then it quickly kind of just almost reset itself fully, went down just about as quick as it came up. And also you can see it hit the 50 EMA here and just steadily kept, just gradually moving upwards, almost borderline sideways, as you can see here. Then eventually moved from around 37K all the way up to approximately 45K. And that drop that you saw that I was pointing out there looks highly similar to this one that we've seen right here. So again, just wanted to point that out to show the vast, or the really intense similarities we're seeing between the breakout here of this 9-month, 8th month healthy consolidation. Again, very correlative to here, as we are then, like I said, breaking out and continuing higher here during this last leg of the bull market here for Bitcoin. If you look here at the RSI, you can see that the RSI has been in an uptrend of this trend zone here, going all the way back to right around August 4th, August 5th of this year. This is when Bitcoin went all the way down to approximately 49,000-50,000, setting the local low of this entire consolidation period here, then ultimately leading into this break, as I pointed out here, of this descending broadening channel or wedge. And the RSI is just right above this zone, so it could still come down a little bit more. We could see we could see the price come down a bit more and even actually break a little bit below this lower bound trend. Actually, if I make another one here, move it down to the wick here that was made down to around 90.6K on November 26th. We can see that it could come down a little bit lower here and meet, as I was saying, the bottom of this band. I think it's totally possible for it to even break a little bit, close candles below it. If we go back to, again, this portion here where we saw very similar price action. You can see right here, there's wicks below it, one candle closed below the 50 EMA band. So I mean, it's totally reasonable to see that happen, and as well, it's totally reasonable to see this similarity not continue to play out. And you could see this vector zone here get recovered, so anywhere from around 79K to 84K, or even down here. So I mean, as I've been saying recently, around 69K to around 74K, we could see potentially another retest of this upper bound, what was resistance so far now being turned into support. We look here at this 2-day chart. As I went over this recently, just pointing out again really is what I was doing in that video was just going from that 6 hour as we just were and moving up, going from 6 hour to the daily, 2-day, and just higher and higher, showing this similarity between the breaking out here again right here back in 2023 of October, November, seeing the same thing in 2024. And so far, as I pointed out in the last video, these vertical lines, you can see the RSI broke above the RSI value of around 78. Did that recently, printed the pink dot, and so far we've moved back below it. Bitcoin has moved below it here. So we could see, again, continue to go lower, especially if price dips down a little bit more. But once it starts to go back above this value of 78, we could potentially see the end of this kind of, as you see back here, it was just slowly, almost roughly at a, probably a little bit less than a 45-degree angle, just slowly and gradually moving upwards. And then we had this tiny impulse or thrust up here, like I said, to 44K. So we could see something similar to that, where we'll see a thrust here soon, maybe upwards towards, as I've been saying, approximately 115K, give or take like 15K over the next, next few weeks, leading into the beginning of 2024. I would say no later than maybe roughly February is when we could potentially see that, if this ends up playing out somewhat like I am painting in this video. Now this chart here is very important. So the moving averages here, specifically, as you can see in this text box, so we're going to have the 50 SMA, the 50 EMA, the 200 SMA, and the 200 EMA. So that's going to be the simplified moving averages and the estimated moving averages, where the 50s, you can see here, SMA yellow, 50 EMA turquoise, 200 SMA black, 200 EMA is white. And what I'm going to first point out here is the 50 SMA to the 50 EMA, so they focus on the yellow and the turquoise here. And we can see here, as we currently are looking at phase 1 of cycle 3, if we go all the way back to the beginning of this phase, so back here, December 2017, January 2018, as Bitcoin was hitting 20K, as it was ending cycle 2, beginning cycle 3, leading into this phase 1 here. So we look down here at these SMA and the EMA, we can see here that the 50 SMA, the yellow, was going above the 50 EMA here, the turquoise. So ultimately we see one cross here, and we saw another cross here 2019 of May. We saw the third cross here January 2020, and we saw a fourth cross here July 2020. And once this fourth cross occurred, this is when Bitcoin really started to go parabolic, and then moved from around 910K all the way up here to around 64K around April 2021. And zooming in here, we can see something very similar, where we see a first cross here, August 2021, second, February 2023, third here in September, and then zooming in here very closely, we have not gotten this cross just yet, but I believe what is more likely than not that we will get this cross, and it will be something very similar to what we saw last time around. So again, we see 1, 2, 3, 4 at the fourth cross, parabolic thrust, parabolic impulse, and we're again seeing 1, 2, 3, and then we're sitting right at the cusp of the fourth one, as Bitcoin has already currently, so from bottom to all the way up at the top here, has moved 544% recently, solidly breaking the all-time highs with this move from around 50K all the way up to basically $100,000 at this point. So I mean, again, similar to what I was saying for the total market value of all cryptocurrencies, every time you see this, where you see a multi-year bear market, so such as this here, and then you see this uptrend began here, obviously it's been over a year at this point, and we're seeing the a solid breaking of the all-time highs right here. Every single time this happens, Bitcoin doesn't just, make a pipsqueak move above the prior all-time highs. It makes a pretty large blue sky breakout above the all-time highs. So I think we will, again, more likely than not, we'll see this cross here. We'll see the 50 SMA, or rather the 50 EMA here go above the 50 SMA. And it will be very similar to what happened last time around during this bear market leading into this bull market, or this uptrend right here. Now, as I've said recently, clearly this is what we're looking at here. Again, is phase one, and ultimately this entire price action right here, this is the bull market of phase one for my cycle theory or model, whatever, of Bitcoin. So ultimately this entire thing, as I pointed out, is the bull market. So just this right here would be more technically is what I would label it as just an uptrend, or the first leg of the Bitcoin bull market of phase one. So if we go back and we then look here, what we're now seeing is phase one and phase two of cycle two. Cycle two beginning here, June 2011, ending all the way here again where cycle three began, phase one of cycle three began, end of December 2017, January 2018. And if we look here again, we see these, the 50 SMA, the 50 EMA, we see one cross, the second cross, full on bull market, parabolic impulse. Then we look here again, so this would be phase one, and then we see here, this is phase two, we see one cross, two, full on, full throttle bull market. So we see in cycle two here, this entire region here, we're seeing two crosses, and then, full throttle bull market. Whereas then we again transition here to what we have currently of cycle three, which is the vast majority of phase one. As I pointed out, we see 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 1, 2, 3, and then 4. So we're seeing from cycle 2 to cycle 3, 2 to 4. So we're seeing a doubling, which is, typically, as I've gone over in past videos, a factor you'll see a lot of times, especially with Bitcoin, and just, doubling sequence. You think about how that applies in other realms of, scientific inquiry, such as biology and other fields, especially in mathematics, and the importance of that. So I think that's rather interesting. Then lastly, we have the 200 SMA black, 200 EMA white, and this one here is, I think, a little bit more eye-opening than the one that I already had gone over. So we see, going all the way back to right here, roughly somewhere around, let's just say June, it's around November of 2020. We actually zoom in very closely here. Can't see it when I was zoomed out there, but we saw this cross here. We can see that here we see one cross and then two. So we saw the 200 EMA go below the 200 SMA, and then the 200 EMA go back above. And that happened right here. Again, very similar to the fourth cross here for the 50 SMA and the 50 EMA. And then again, full throttle bull market, or uptrend rather. And then we see the same thing here. We saw the cross below the 200 EMA, below the 200 SMA here around January 2023. So right at the beginning of the current, second uptrend, ending the bull market of phase one here of cycle three. And this is the 7-day chart. Now, for whatever reason, the 7-day chart, as opposed to the 1-week chart, represents and portrays different data. So on the weekly, we haven't seen this cross right here of the 200 EMA going above the 200 SMA. But on the 7-day chart, if I zoom in really, really closely here, you can see that we have gotten this cross. So again, so last time this happened was when Bitcoin went from basically, at least by the time, they first met, again, from around 9 to 64,000. If we go back to phase two of cycle two, we can see that the 200 EMA went below the 200 SMA somewhere around November, December 2016, and then it crossed back above somewhere around February, March of 2017. This was right as Bitcoin was at the all-time highs, and then began this final, most parabolic impulse of the bull market for here in phase two. And then if we actually go back even to phase one of cycle two, we can see that they Not enough data, obviously doesn't go back far enough, but they're literally right on top of each other. And if I were to go lower, the cross, actually I'll just go ahead and go lower. If we go, I don't remember exactly what time frame it is where the cross actually occurs. Here, the 3-day, actually, let's see if the 4-day shows. Yes, so we see here on the 4-day where they're basically right on top of each other right here, so we can just see this as, and the 3-day already had it, as I shown. You may have not seen it, but it was there. So we see the 200 EMA go below the 200 SMA somewhere right here, and just roughly within this range of price, and then it crosses back above somewhere right around, actually I need to zoom in, it's kind of hard to tell. So specifically somewhere, yeah, around September of 2012 is when we saw that bullish cross back above again, right when Bitcoin is just a tad bit below the all-time highs, and then really begins here this bull market of phase 1 of cycle 2. So seeing this again once more, going to be very, very important. Like I said, we already saw that technically. So I mean, that's already confirmed. I mean, that even goes back further than the 50 SMA to the 50 EMA. So we're still just waiting on the 50 SMA and 50 EMA cross, but I mean, we've already gotten the 200 SMA and 200 EMA cross. So, I mean, I would say that's like I said, even more bullish because it goes back further in time and it's has more history to convey that that is highly bullish. And clearly all of these are correlated with the, let's say the latter half of the Bitcoin bull markets, or just generally the point in time in the Bitcoin bull markets where we see it really go full throttle bull mode towards its all-time highs and a blue sky breakout. If you look here at the 2-week chart, if you look down here at the RSI with the Bollinger Bands, you can see that there's a descending resistance here going back to the all-time high. So the end of cycle 1, June 2011. You can see these 2 peaks here in phase 1 of cycle 2 right here were met the resistance. The peak of phase 2, so the end of cycle 2 here in 2017, beginning of 2018, also found rejection here. And then also the first uptrend peak of the bull market of phase 1 cycle 3 here in March of 2020 when Bitcoin hit 64K, also found rejection here. So will we see rejection here once more? I mean, according to history, it seems fairly likely. May at least, I would say, at least 50%, perhaps higher. But I think there's definitely a chance that it doesn't even touch it, and it also might go above it. I also think there's a pretty good chance that we will see a bearish divergence with respect to this peak back here in March 2021 at 64K, leading into, so we'll see something like this where it will come up, the RSI will come up and touch this resistance. Again, macro historical resistance going all the way back to 2011, so roughly 14 years at this point. So we could see something, I think it's fairly likely that we will see something similar to that, to where we'll see the price here in terms of the all-time highs is ascending, whereas the RSI is descending. So again, we'll see some bearish divergence, which you've actually seen that every single time. If you look here, from here 2011 to 2013, we again see some bearish divergence. Then we again continue it here. So from here to 2017, still descending, where price is ascending. And again, it just continues to carry out here. The price is just further and further ascending here, whereas we're seeing the RSI continuing to descend over time, which I've talked about that and how important that is overall, just pertaining to the general structure in terms of the phases and the cycles of Bitcoin as it progresses over time. Lastly, here on this 2-week chart, I just wanted to point out here that again, this RSI, for taking a look at the RSI with the Bollinger Bands, pointed out recently again how we see this breaking back above, which is very similar to October, November 2023. So we need to continue to see this move up here. Seeing the moving average move up in the median of the Bollinger Bands is also very good. That recently happened as well, which I pointed out in the last video. Again, we're still seeing potentially some consolidation, some, again, healthy consolidation. Again, something very similar to, roughly the same period of time in 2023 as we're leading into 2024. So we're seeing end of 2024 akin to end of 2023, leading into 2025 as we led into 2024 during the second impulse. But overall, I mean, Bitcoin looks, I personally think, amazing right now. I think it's quite clear that it's going to continue to go higher here, although there's clearly definitely room for some drawbacks or more significant pullbacks as I went over on those lower time frame charts. If we look here at the Bitcoin dominance, we can see here that the dominance is seen quite a pretty big move down to, not necessarily big. It looks, in terms of just looking at the candles, it's quite a significant drop. It's the most significant and severely looking drop since, I mean, really going back to this accumulation period back here. So, I mean, we can just say anywhere from around May of 2021 all the way to around November 2022. But within this uptrend here, we can see that this drop is definitely the most significant since November 2022. So far, it's down from around approximately 62% Bitcoin dominance all the way down to around approximately 56% Bitcoin dominance, around like an 8-9% drop. If we look here at the RSI, now this is really telling. Like, seeing this insanely steep drop here in the RSI, it's borderline purely vertical. This is again very similar to, if we look back here at this prior instance, so the 2020 American presidential election, you see these steep drop-offs. You see back here in 2016. Again, I pointed out the inverse correlation of the US presidential elections here on the Bitcoin dominance in comparison to Bitcoin in a prior video. So I think we're seeing, again, we're just seeing history heavily rhyming with itself. And I think this is, again, just further pointing to the fact that altcoin season has really already began. I mean, obviously, the vast majority of the altcoins have already set their lows. I mean, when the altcoins are setting their lows, I mean, that's really when alt season begins. I mean, really, you want to start buying any coin or any asset for that matter when they're setting their lows and they're in their accumulation periods, rather than when they're breaking their, let's say, their uppermost, horizontal or descending resistances after it's already moved up, hundreds percents or, thousands of percents. You want to, catch them in their lows and their accumulation periods rather than when they've already moved up quite a substantial amount. If you look here at the total market value for all cryptocurrencies, and that is excluding Bitcoin and Ethereum, you can see that right now it is currently at the top. So basically, it's right at the prior all-time high. So, I mean, again, we're literally right at the cusp of what I'll just call, full throttle, that, really parabolic alt season. We look here at Phantom again, like I was saying, I mean, this right here is really when, this is like the undercover alt season back here. This is accumulation period. This is when the lows are setting. This is really when you want to buy, so you can catch this accumulation build up into the full on parabolic, full throttle alt season, which, you could classify as something like this as it moves towards its all-time high, potential projection range. Phantom looks great here. Nothing really much to go over on this. Still above the descending resistance, which is great to see. Everything I went over for all these altcoins in terms of resistances and potential supports, so on and so forth, in the prior altcoin videos still applies for basically all of these. LCX has, been moving very well here, sitting right at the resistance here. Still needs to get above that. If we look here at MATIC, MATIC's been bouncing very well, as I was going over this in the last altcoin video. Just pointing out how it's, I mean, as you can see here, and as I pointed out, it's been drifting downwards quite significantly, as a lot of altcoins were making quite sizable gains. But so far, it's seeing a very, nice bounce here in this very crucial support zone that goes all the way back and has been integral for price movement back in March of 2021. Again, still needs to break this descending resistance here. THETA is one of the coins that has recently broke this resistance and gave me an indication within the last 48 hours or so. So again, this is very good to see. Still needs again to move above the horizontal resistances that I pointed out in the last video. And again, as I already said, all of the potential retracement levels are still the same. ANKR really still looks nothing too much to say here. It's moved closer towards the descending resistance. As you can see, it's sitting literally right on top of it. So I mean, it's very close to breaking that. So once it continues to move above that, which I think, again, more than likely not, I think rather than seeing significant retracements here for altcoins or a Bitcoin as well, Ethereum, Cardano, the vast majority of the market, especially the coins that are really going to have sizable gains, leading into, the rest of this bull market, and especially alt season. I don't think it's, too likely that we'll be seeing anything substantially over like 20 to 30%. Now some altcoins might hit that range, maybe, 35, pushing 40% at most, maybe. That's a big maybe. I don't really think that's too likely at all. But I mean, it's definitely possible because I mean, altcoins do, obviously. If Bitcoin starts bleeding a good bit, especially if Bitcoin tests like 69K, like I was saying on the like 6-hour chart earlier, we could definitely see some of these altcoins, tank probably approximately like 30% or so. Which actually, just to give myself some sort of, perception of what that would be like, 30% here would take ANKR down, only down to around, roughly around 3 to 3.5 cents. And it would still, I mean, it would recover around 50% of this vector zone. You see these vector candles here, it would recover around 50% of that zone. So that's definitely feasible here for ANKR to see that around 30% drop. Looking here at XYO has been moving very, very well over the last 24, 48 hours. Actually, recently made a buy-in into this around 5 days ago, and so far that's doing very well. I had looked at the 6-hour chart, and I saw a convergent, symmetrical, almost pennant-looking type formation on the 6-hour. And despite, some certain other things that I was seeing that could have indicated some potential downside or retracement, it just looked really good. That, that nice convergent, symmetrical looking price action caused me to make a buy-in. So far it's doing very well. Actually look from this most recent local low in September up to now, it's up 850% just within this current weekly candle. It is up, it's up around 390%. So again, very well. This, you can see here, this ascending trend zone that I pointed out last time I went over this as being very important. This, I clearly can see this massive candle is above it. So far it's wicked all the way up to almost 4 cents at around 0.038. Now, like I said, I mean, this chart unfortunately doesn't have any volume data, so I can't see any vector zones for this, but very likely this current weekly candle is a vector candle. So I mean, potentially, it could retrace as low as 0.007. And on lower time frames on other charts that I look at to show vector volume, I mean, it could, at lowest go down to around like 0.0057. But I mean, roughly 50% of that would probably be closer to around like roughly a penny. And that's definitely possible to see, especially because it's been moving so well recently. But overall, this looks great. Again, everything still kind of just stays the same. Whether or not it goes to the downside, sees a healthy correction, or, also all the all-time highs, or all-time high projections rather, are going to be the same for all of these as well. Here for JASMY, this is also recently one of the coins that has set off this indicator here, this horizontal resistance sitting right at it as well. Is not really quite above it just yet. Still needs to close a weekly candle above it, but it's wicked above it. So I mean, that's clearly good. Clearly this has been doing well. I mean, to go back to Bitcoin here real quick and zoom in, a lot of these altcoins we're seeing some, just minor, like, 5-10% roughly drawdowns as Bitcoin was, moving here from around this local high around 98.7 down to around like, 94.7. So around a $4,000 drop here for Bitcoin. We saw a lot. These altcoins were, like I said, seeing, minor drawdowns, but now the Bitcoin is seeing this minor bounce that it's seeing. We're starting to see some of these altcoins move up here and do quite well, even though Bitcoin's not moving up, absolutely massively. Dogecoin here also looks, still looks great. Still looks better than just about every other altcoin, just about, outside of like something like Ethereum or, as I pointed out in this last video, a lot of confluence in the way it looks in comparison to its last bull run. Definitely still, it looks like it potentially, we're seeing these candles, they're starting to become smaller and smaller. We're seeing some volume die off here. So again, we could definitely see that retest here again of this ascending support anywhere down to like, I don't know, roughly 25 cents or so, maybe even down to this descending, or rather this I call this an ascending support, this ascending resistance. It still needs to be flipped into support, but this descending resistance here, again, you know, maybe 15 cents. But at that point, if it were to go down to 15 cents, that would be a 70% drop. In a bull market, I don't think that's, you know, feasible at all. If it moves down to around like 25 cents, that would be around a 43% drop. So that's definitely possible as well. Again, like I said, you know, maybe let's just say 25 to 45%. We could potentially see some of these altcoins drop that much, especially if Bitcoin continues to go lower here and deviates lower than as I was pointing out earlier on in the video. But I believe that was all that I wanted to go over in this video. So as always, none of this is meant to be financial advice. But all that being said, everything gone over, I hope you all enjoyed. I hope you all have a wonderful day.
Now won't I see you forever, such a long time.